Welcome to the Intentional Health for Women podcast. I'm your host, Garrett GQ Query. This podcast is dedicated to developing intentional health for women. Former 400-pound fat man turned health and fitness professional, specializing in women's health. In this podcast, you will find over a decade of experience in the health and fitness industry, serving women to become their most intentional self through strength training, nutrition, and lifestyle practices. Each week, we will dive into a variety of different topics, ranging from interviews with women leading the way in the health and fitness industry, client case studies throughout the years, myth busting, social media trends, female hormones, gut health, and so much more. We are not normal. We are intentional. Welcome to another episode of the Intentional Health for Women podcast. I'm your host, Garrett GQ Query, and today I'm joined by Sara. Sara, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Me and Sara, we met at my second somatic breath experience. It's honestly been one of the most transformational things that I've ever done for my life, honestly, in its entirety, but really made a huge impact on stepping into this new season of my life, and really just helped me let go of a lot of things. And I feel that was something you definitely experienced.
Completely.
Tell us a little bit about that. What was that experience for you?
So my big breakthrough, well, first of all, I went into it thinking what is this hippy dippy breathwork class? And my friends that invited me, they were like, just do it. We did it once. It'll change your life. So I went in with a completely open mind.
Yeah.
And I remember when she explained what you're going to feel and how you're going to feel your ego try to prevent you from letting go. I felt that. Mm-hmm. And once I did, and I let myself kind of experience the full immersion of that class, it was life-changing. I felt like I released so much trauma that I had held in my body for the last couple years with what I've been through. And to be able to experience that with all of you guys, some of you I had never met, some I had seen around town or at the gym, but to really be the most vulnerable I've ever been in my life around these people. And then at the end, you feel like we're all like one big family. Yeah. It was amazing.
What do you mean by getting into your body?
So I feel that the voice in our head is our biggest critic. That's where, whether you want to say it's the enemy planting seeds of doubt or, just fears that you have talking down to yourself from things from childhood. It's hard to push all of that out of the way and let yourself just completely be open to receiving. I'll be honest, I felt like I felt the spirit in that experience, in that state that we were in. And I don't know if all of those walls that we built up since childhood, I don't know if you could actually experience God or the spirit if you let those walls stay up.
Yeah.
100%.
Mm-hmm. That was a big one for me at the most recent experience, was just really getting into the body, right? Kind of getting out of your head, allowing you to truly sit and feel the feels, feel everything, feel it, let it go. Mm-hmm. You said trauma over the last couple of years. And I mean, from the sounds of, what I've grasped on the surface, was probably one of the lowest moments in your life.
Sure. Yeah.
What was that?
So September of 2022, I found out that my husband had been having a years-long affair. So betrayal trauma.
Yeah.
We had been together for over a decade. We had a family. It was definitely probably the most traumatic thing I've ever been in my life. Yeah. Like rug completely pulled out from under me.
Because you really didn't have any idea, right? Like,
no.
Yeah.
In all, he was, he's a law enforcement officer. So I was kind of a single mom in a sense that I was used to him always working. Like I was used to doing everything myself. So I had no idea. I never asked questions if he had to work late or have training, anything like that. I was completely content in my life.
Yeah. Business as usual.
Yeah, totally.
And nothing was there, like being together for 10 years. There's obviously ebbs and flows through that time frame.
Completely.
Right? Seasons of being closer, seasons of being further apart, seasons of, working through things.
Mm-hmm.
During that time frame or even the year leading up to it, was there anything like, was that a more difficult season or was seemingly everything pretty hunky-dory?
I think my mindset was no matter what we're going through, like he is my person for life. So was our marriage perfect? Absolutely not. His job was very stressful, very demanding. I've played just the supportive role, kind of reactive to whatever he was going through. If he, had been in an officer-involved shooting or just different stressors, a difficult call that he had been on or whatever. I was just the supportive role, and I was completely content in that. Looking back, it's interesting because hindsight's 2020. We never had date nights. We never took vacations without the kids. Like, we did not pour into our marriage. And there were many discussions about that, where I did want more affection, attention, what have you. But, life would happen and work would get in the way. And yeah.
It's also something that's become, I think, as a collective, as society, like we've become a lot more aware.
Mm-hmm.
Like social media, I think, has a lot of negatives that we've seen develop. But I also feel that it is brought to the surface and allowed us to advance as a society and culture at extreme rates. Like as far as like, what does a healthy like relationship look like, And realistically, like a decade ago, or for you, 12 years ago now, right? If I'm mathing right, somewhere in that realm. You were together for 10 years. It's a couple of years ago now, coming up on 3. A lot of that didn't necessarily exist.
Oh, Instagram wasn't around.
Yeah.
Then.
And so you didn't, and to get to my point is like, a lot of times the only influence we have is like our parents or close family members' relationships.
Right.
And so if they didn't have that, like, is that something that you even saw? Like, did you really see that growing up, or even in maybe relatives' relationships, like a dynamic like that?
Sure. So I grew up in a very, my father was an amazing provider. And so in my mind, I would justify whatever our marriage lacked. He was a good provider.
Yeah.
He that was, I think I valued the security and safety from a provider, and I made excuses for everything else. Like, as long as he was a good provider, then I will just deal with the fact that, we don't go on dates. Like, we don't go on vacation. I kind of take the back burner position all the time, because at the end of the day, like, he was a good provider.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what my example was from my own father.
100%. Mm-hmm. So you've been a trainer.
I'm going to age myself really bad right now.
Since 2009. Which really threw me for a loop, because like I told you, like I was like, oh, she's the same age as me. Mm-hmm. And grand scheme of things, like you're not like way older than me by any means. We would have went to high school together, just separated by a few years. But like when I read 2009, I'm like, there's no way. I'm like, that would make you 19 when you became a trainer, but not far off, a couple of years. Mm-hmm. How big of a role throughout those years, right? Because really, like what you're talking about and what I'm hearing is like you were a part of a very traditional marriage, like what a lot of us have witnessed, especially like growing up in the 90s. Mm-hmm. Me personally, I grew up in the Midwest, and that's, from what you are saying, like that's a pretty traditional marriage of like a lot of kids that I grew up with. Like that was like a good marriage.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like dad's a provider. He pays all the bills, the this and the that.
My mom stayed home, cooked dinner every night. Mm-hmm.
Date nights are few and far between. Mom and dad aren't that lovey-dovey. Like, but that was the quote unquote American dream in the 90s. Right. And how much has like fitness played a role in grounding you?
Me personally, or being, so I will say that fitness has pulled me out from some really dark places throughout my life. Most recent, obviously, finding out about the affair, I didn't skip a beat. I mean, I was still in the gym, and Queen Creek's a very small town. Word spread very fast. But I was still in the gym because I had to move that energy out of my body. There were times I would be deadlifting over in the corner, and that last rep, the bar would hit the ground and I would just start crying, like in the middle of the gym. Yep. But it felt good. It was so therapeutic. Yeah, I mean, between fitness and God, I mean, I look back through a lens of gratitude now, for sure, for going through that.
100%. I mean, I think it's super important. It's a theme that's coming up a lot in my life, and especially like the people that I like surround myself with, is like, we have two choices in life. Like I heard a statement years ago. I don't know if I'll ever forget it. Is like, life is either happening to you or for you, and it's a choice.
Yeah. And sometimes when you're in those deep moments, you toggle between the two.
For sure.
Because there were moments where I'm just asking God, like, how, why, like, what am I going to do? Going from, to circle back on that breathwork class, I remember one of the feelings that I felt was that when he left, it was like my safety was gone. And betrayal trauma is when a trauma is placed on the victim that relies on that person for either support or survival.
Mhm.
And he was my husband. He was like, I mean, I was going to live with him for the end of my days. So I remember feeling like all of my safety was gone. And towards the end of the breathwork class, when Jen was talking about the doorway and seeing the 6-year-old version of yourself and giving that child the word that you wrote down, my word was love. And I will, like, I swear, God was telling me, like, let him go. I will keep you safe.
Mhm.
So in those moments where I was like, why is this happening? I really just dove into scripture and dove into my relationship with Christ. And I realized that no, through any trial I've been through, he will sustain me. He will keep me safe. He will sustain my family. So then now, like I said, I look at it through a lens of gratitude, and it did happen for me. I am closer with Christ than I ever have been. I'm a stronger woman, stronger mother. I know my worth now, interestingly enough. It's crazy. Yeah.
Isn't that funny how that works?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes we have to walk through those deep things. Like it's funny that you say that way, because that's something that I've experienced over this past year is experiences that I've been through. It's like, it really just like big ahas and like, oh,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Like this is your worth. This is where you belong. This is where you're going. Like everything that you've dreamed of, everything that you want, it's there or it's coming, and like you're worth it. And it's just like this like lately it's been almost like this step ladder, and it's been a very interesting and eye-opening experience. And for you, like, have you noticed, like you say, like noticed your worth? Like, is it something that, for me, it's been almost more uncomfortable than like the pain itself, like the evolution of itself, right? Like walking through those really low points. It's hard.
Oh, 100%.
It's awful.
I think the hardest part for me was being alone. I had been with him since I was 23.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those were the moments. And I love my girlfriends to death because I would just call them crying. Like, I can't do this. I can't be alone. Like, it is a physical pain for me to be alone.
Yeah.
And I think that when people are going through divorce, one of the reasons why they're so quick to jump into another relationship is because they don't want to go through that process of the hurt that it is to be alone, because it's very hard.
The pain is deafening.
Oh my gosh. But now, yeah, do I have moments where I wish I had somebody to fall asleep next to? Sure. But I value my alone time now. I'm content in the season that God has me in right now. And I am faithful enough to know that when the time is right, I will, be in a relationship again.
100%. I think that's one thing that's like really unique about our generation is, for those of us who have either, I've dated, I was with someone for 3 years and engaged. I'd imagine that was a similar pain. Like when I like when I ended that, it wasn't so much the relationship that I grieved as like what it meant to me, the engagement, the like, hey, this is going, like you said, you were married. It's like, hey, this is like my person. This is who I'm going to spend my life with.
Mm-hmm.
And the loss of that. And I think one thing that I see, and that's very unique about our generation, is like we're seeing this generation of people who are like unwilling to settle. And while being alone can be very painful and very uncomfortable, we're willing to sit with that and wait. And it also just like breeds a degree of like independence of like creating like our own lives. And that it's like the way it was once described to me is like create such a magnificent life, like that as if you are on a highway and you're in a car. And unless someone comes up on that highway at the same speed, heading in a similar direction, and is able to hop in your car, keep going. Like you don't exit off the interstate for anyone. Like you're not willing, like, and that's something that I've gone all in. And I think from what I'm hearing from you is like between my faith, therapy, breath work, like I've gone all in on, and I absolutely refuse to exit. I refuse to stop. I refuse to slow down. And the more that compounds, the more comfortable I get in like creating my own happiness, which as I've like learned about relationships over the years, and I read Will Smith's book a couple of years ago, and that was a big focal point for him, and something that he really struggled with because he was very much like an anxious attachment.
I can relate to that.
Absolutely. He was very much like an anxious attachment, and like his, very public marriage was like he constantly tried to rely on his wife for his happiness. Is she okay? Is she happy? Okay, good. I'm happy. Like, and just that very sensitive nature to that. And if not, right. And that was the demise. And I think they've, I don't know, gotten back together. I have no idea. I haven't kept track, but like in the book, he talks about that, like that it eventually led to the demise of their relationship.
Sure.
And that's that dynamic of like, and I think a lot of people can relate to that. How is like fitness? This podcast is, women's health. Obviously, a big part of this is pulling stories because relatability, right? Like there's someone out there in your shoes, maybe on the brink of divorce, recently divorced, a couple of years post-divorce, and maybe they didn't have the foundation of health and fitness. Like how, like circling back to that topic and really kind of getting to that again is like, how is that even that foundation helped you as a mom throughout those 10 years, like grounding you in your ability to show up for your kids? Because that's something that I'm super passionate about as someone who has yet to have kids, is like, I know leading into this next chapter, if I'm fortunate enough to either have my own kids, marry someone who has kids, or otherwise, is like the way that I'm going to lead my family is my foundation in fitness and my faith, without a doubt. Sure. But fitness is a huge piece of that puzzle to be able to stay grounded and do the things that I need to do in my role in a family.
Right. Well, while I was married, my husband and I were both very healthy. So our kids know no different.
Yeah.
They know that it's a non-negotiable to stay healthy, stay active. they see it as, you know, during COVID, that was family time. Like we would go to a school and do a workout in the empty football field. You know, what has been amazing is over the years, the women that I have worked with that send me pictures of their kids wanting to work out with them on the weekend, or their kids just going out in their home gym and working out by themselves. And I'm like, you are creating that. You know, a lot of us in our generation didn't grow up with that example at all. I mean, we grew up on bagel bites and what else? Gushers. I mean, just anything processed, right?
Mac and cheese, hamburger helper.
Those penguin dinners.
We had fried food Fridays. Because back I'm sure you were the same thing in the 90s. It was kind of almost the same craze as air fryers are today. It was like the Fry Daddies had become such a huge thing, like at home deep fryers.
Oh, we didn't have one of those.
Yeah, well, it was
a very Midwest thing.
Yeah, probably. It was just a very popular item in the 90s in general, and I'm sure it probably impacted the Midwest more because we've got our comfort food on lock.
Right. But nonetheless, our generation didn't grow up with those examples.
No.
So now, helping these women that are all millennials like us, when they send me pictures of their kids wanting to work out with them, or, you know, when it's school break and they're home and the kids want to join in. So then I'll just lead the kids in a workout with their parents. It's amazing. I think that's been one of the most rewarding things, is knowing that these are habits that they will have forever.
Skill sets. Because for me, I grew up in a very overweight family, right? And my parents, my dad was a chef. My mom was very intelligent. They knew all of the right things, right? Eat protein, eat veggies, you know, quality carbs, lots of fruit in the house always. But they weren't leading by example, right? It was fried food Fridays. It was like the family activities. Like, even I was home a lot this past year in Minnesota, and there was one evening, it was like the only evening on this trip home that we were going to have a chance to have family dinner, right? Like everybody. And I had made a long drive to go to my coach's gym, like 7 hours round trip.
Oh my gosh.
Made the drive, and I was getting back to my sister's late. I was like 45 minutes late, and to my disappointment, because it wasn't like a holiday meal, I come home and everybody is not sitting at the dinner table. Everybody's sitting on the couch, eating their meal and arguing about a movie and like messing around on their cell phones. And those are very much so like the habits that I have left behind. I think one of the biggest like points to like pull away from like what you just said is kids are watching and kids are imitating.
Always.
Like they do what you do. We see it on socials all the time now. And like the impact that is going to have on that generation is exponential.
Oh yeah.
Like we are going to see a generation like what's insane right now is like, I think we're starting to see it. Not too long ago, like I saw there was like a 22-year-old kid in like South Africa shatter like every powerlifting record in his weight class.
Wow.
At like 22 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Shatter. We are seeing a generation of kids that were raised by people like healthy parents, like lifting, leading by example.
Yeah.
And we are going to see like over the next 10, 20 years, like a generation and like mind-blowing advances in sports, health, fitness, lifting, and just like just in general.
Even nutrition, I think too. Yeah.
100%. Just a completely different mindset around it. So what does that look like as a mom raising your kids in a healthy family? Like, what does that look like for your kids? Like, how much has that impacted them as you see, you know, because especially like you've had the opportunity, you've been a coach since 2009. You've impacted hundreds, maybe even thousands of women's lives at this point. What do you see in your kids versus maybe kids that like are, you know, involved in your kids' school, daycares or otherwise, like that maybe aren't in the same environment?
Sure. Well, so my kids are 8, 10, and 17. So I will say my 17-year-old preps his own meals to take to school. Like he will not eat school lunch.
Yeah.
He has, without my, I don't push him to do this. Like he will eat something because it has more carbs or more protein. You know, he has started to do his own research. Because even if I did tell him, he wouldn't listen.
Of course not. Mom doesn't know anything.
With my younger ones, they comply with how we do things, but I will say they think I'm the strict mom. We don't have the fun snacks. You know, their friends always have better snacks. And so with them, it's still a battle with, you know, what the world and what society deems acceptable and what I deem acceptable. But, you know, I don't know. They're just little. They're still little.
How does that impact their behavior though? Like obviously like they're kids and they're like, this is bullshit. Like mom, like I want the good snacks.
Right.
But over the years as a coach, like I've noticed coaching clients, like it impacts my clients' children's health generally, right? Like they're making different decisions. The kids eat different foods and they're like, oh my God, like Garrett, like my kids, like they behave so much better.
Oh yeah. I mean, you know, my youngest son, if he has a freaking bag of Doritos, he's like a wild animal, you know, or if he has, what else? Not goldfish, but like Sour Patch Kids or anything like that. Stuff that I don't generally keep in my house.
Right.
He's crazy, you know? And I do explain to them, he's in jujitsu, so I'll have him have a healthy snack and he kind of whines about it. But I explain to him, like, look, like you need the energy. Like this is good for you. I make this immunity drink. It's like lemon, ginger, turmeric. And the kids love it and they're used to it now. So it's just, you know, as they get older, I mean, maybe, I don't know. How old are we before we realize our parents were right? Who knows? But I know I recognize a huge difference in them when they are at their friend's house and they're eating like crap. Not to say that all of their friends, you know what I mean? But it's like if my daughter's at her friend's house and they go to QT and load up on all the crap, right? She's going to feel like crap and she wonders why she has a stomach ache and, you know, her skin looks bad or what have you. Yeah, there's behavioral differences when they indulge in that kind of stuff versus when they don't, for sure.
Yeah. 100%. How has faith, you kind of touched on this a little bit more, but I feel like there's maybe more to expand. Like How has faith impacted as you've walked through the last 3 years?
Well, there's a lot there.
Yeah.
I will say, as much as I tried to keep what was going on away from the kids, there were many times when they would come into my room and I would just be crying reading my Bible. And I hope that if they have learned anything, it's that like God has got us through the hardest of times. And no matter what, we are still a family. I have walked into my daughter's room and I've seen her reading her Bible by herself, and she's 10. I have tried, and again, a lot of this is like they've just seen me in my vulnerable state. I would try to carve out that vulnerable time after I put them to bed. I go to my room, I have my alone time, just me and the Lord. But a lot of times it does end up in me crying and just kind of unloading all of those emotions that I tuck away because I have shit to do. And I hope that they have seen that in the hardest times, I have relied on Christ.
Yeah.
I haven't relied on, drinking, drugs, other relationships, whatever. Like I have relied on
Netflix.
Yeah, right. I think faith has been the anchor to keep us still when our world was just spinning out of control.
Yeah.
That's the best way I could paint the picture. It really has been the anchor of everything, I am fortunate enough that because I had done everything in my marriage, that the kids' routines didn't really change. Where we lived changed, but their school didn't change, dance didn't change, football didn't change, nothing changed.
Yeah.
And I think that just them seeing me rely on the Lord and handle everything with grace, I hope that that's something that they will, because divorce is horrible. Like nobody goes into a marriage wanting to get divorced. But I hope that the example that I have set for them is that, there is a way to handle it with grace, with Christ helping you.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
To kind of go back off of that as far as like the fitness piece is the foundation, is like talk a little bit about during that time frame. Be willing to bet you probably weren't making a whole lot of progress in the gym.
Sheesh. So
probably
when I found out,
like maintenance, like just like,
oh, I lost weight when I found out.
Yeah.
I couldn't eat. I couldn't keep anything down if I tried. Yeah, looking back on photos during that time, which there were none initially right after, it's crazy. It's from the day that I found out for probably like 3 weeks. I take a lot of pictures. I probably have 60,000 pictures on my phone. But for that 3-week period,
the life of a health
bumps.
and fitness coach.
Oh my gosh, I know. And I always tell myself, like, I'm going to make a file for each client. And then they're just all together. But now, on iPhone, you can like type in like workout or whatever, and it makes it so easy. Anyways, there was nothing for like a 3-week period. It just skipped from literally the day before when we were celebrating my stepdaughter's birthday to 3 weeks later. Yeah. I lost probably between 10 and 15 pounds in a really short period of time. I ended up having to get mobile IV to come
And
out.
how tall are you?
I'm 5'5" and a half.
And you average between like 145 and 150 now, yeah?
Well, okay. So what is also interesting is I was stuck at 140 for a while. Through therapy, I have learned that I was running consistently in a state of fight or flight all the time. So I wasn't making gains at all. Now, my mental health is the best it's ever been. And anything I change in my programming or my nutrition, my body responds like that. That has been amazing to experience. Yeah.
I went through a lot of interesting things in my 20s, and I remember like at the end of a relationship, and it wasn't necessarily the relationship, just going through a lot of things. But at the end cap of a relationship, I dropped like 20 pounds in a month. Now, granted, I'm 5'10", and on average have walked around at 230 to 240 pounds majority of my adult life. Not as big of a deal as being 5'5" and 140. It's pretty dramatic.
Oh, yeah.
15 pounds in 3 weeks.
Yep. And just in a constant state of fight or flight all the time.
How long did that take to really like start to shift, weight to start to come back?
You know, once I moved out of our marital home, while I was there, I felt like I couldn't rest. It was too much. I had to completely separate myself from him. Like I had to break that trauma bond with him.
Yeah.
So that my body could start to
release.
Yes, 100%. So I would say probably by December of 2022 is when I slowly started to like, okay, my weight is creeping up slowly.
So how long had that been?
4 months.
Okay. I think that's something that's really interesting to me and weird. Is people like stay. Like you see it a lot with women, with kids typically. Like stay in the home that they purchase together. And it's like, how much healing and like how healthy is this? Like
not.
Yeah. Weight starts to creep back on. When did you finally start to notice? Because kind of like what I alluded to was fitness being an anchor in your life. Like there will be, I think that's where a lot of people mess up. Maybe people who don't have that foundation of fitness, like that they've like truly developed over years. It's where it can trip a lot of people up is they think that they need to constantly be making progress. And like realistically, like life is going to throw some really heavy seasons at you. And when fitness is a foundation, you may go through a season, and by a season, I mean years, where you going to the gym is literally just, it's like, it's ticking a box. You're lifting weights, you're releasing some degree of energy. It can be therapeutic in nature, but it's not therapy. How long before you finally started to like really like see progress again, be able to shift gears and kind of like you alluded to it. You said, hey, like eventually like it got to a point like, oh, I make a change like nutrition, or I make a change in training, and like my body responds because I'm not living in fight or flight. Like you've done the work in therapy.
So I think it was probably around spring of 2023 where I really started to notice like, okay, like this is how I'm supposed to feel.
So a year and a half.
So about close to a year.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But healing is not linear.
No.
You know, I have backtracked. I have backtracked. I think it's something, you know, even if I was to say with being single now, even if I was to say, yeah, I feel like I'm in a good spot. I feel like I'm healing, I'm healed. The second I'm in a serious relationship, I'm going to backtrack. I will get triggered. I will get anxious, you know? So, but I think through all of it, showing myself grace and accepting that fitness is part of who I am. So even if I am just going and walking, it does help.
Yeah. That was one thing that really made a huge impact on me over this last year. January 1 of 2024, I started 75 Hard. And, you know, as a health and fitness coach, we all know that's not the answer as far as like dieting, right? Like it's not, and the creator of the program, like if you listen to his podcast at any length or any detail, he talks about it all the time. He's like, this is not a diet. It was never created for that. It was created for mental toughness, right? Mm-hmm. And as a business owner, that's exactly why I used that program. Mm-hmm. And something that I noticed for me at that time, I was only working out and training 4 days per week. Everything else was either a ruck, a hike, or a walk. And I cannot tell you how many times in those 75 days that like I had my second workout and I didn't want to do it. And like how much better just simply a walk makes you feel. Mm-hmm. How much it can allow you to get out of your head, get into your body, feel the feels, let them go. And move, like genuinely like move through that, and like how therapeutic that can be. The other funny thing that came up for me when you were talking, and it makes me chuckle, is like I said earlier, I think social media is a massive blessing, but I feel like there's a lot of negatives to it as well. And one of the things is like awareness around mental health, trauma, and other things. And so many people, especially like in my experience, like women tend to run around and they're like, well, I've gone to therapy and I'm healed. I'm like, you might have missed the mark. Mm-hmm. Because exactly like you said, like, and to hear that you have awareness around it already, having not been in a relationship, that you know, like, hey, the day that I get into another relationship, it's going to be a massive like backpedal, and it's going to be like, oh, okay, now I have a mirror held up to me every single day. Mm-hmm. There's more to work. There's more to unpack. Right. And it's like a never ending journey and dance with that partner, that the next partner that you choose to spend your life with. And that's so powerful because so many people, they're like, oh, well, I'm healed. It's like, well, no. Mm-hmm. And just because like when you're even dating, right, and courting someone to potentially be a life partner, if they trigger you, like that's not a bad thing. Like it's, are you like, does this person's values align? Like is this, can I see myself building and growing and walking through these things with this person? And are they healthy enough to do the same?
Sure.
So it's good to hear. Everyone gets asked this question. This is the Intentional Health for Women podcast. As you walk into, we have a unique opportunity right now, right? It's the middle of January of 2025, beginning of the year. Mm-hmm. What does living intentionally look like as you walk into 2025?
I think in this season of my life, being a single mom, the way that I live intentionally is to really make sure I'm not neglecting myself, which is very easy to do as a mom.
Yeah.
When you touched on 75 Hard being about mental toughness, what it brought up for me was that is the one thing I've always had is the mental toughness. What has been hard for me is to let myself feel feelings. So the way that I have been trying to be intentional is having moments with my kids where we talk about our feelings. And I think I speak for a lot of us millennials that is not how we grew up. That has been my biggest focus and will continue to be going into this year, is really being intentional with letting my kids feel like they are being heard. For me, which that wasn't even really about me, again, like such a mom thing, right? Like making it about my kids. I mean, the same thing could be said for me, though. I am trying to receive love, feel feelings, communicate my feelings rather than just zip it up and keep it moving and keep the peace. In my fitness, I'm always just trying to get stronger. I don't know what the future holds for me. I don't know if I might have another baby someday. I think I want to just keep getting stronger, keep building lean muscle, and have good digestion. And I would love to consistently journal more. That's something that, as the craziness of the back half of last year, I wasn't doing consistently. And that's my time that I really value with the Lord. I love reading scripture nightly and journaling nightly. So I do want to be more intentional with that, because I feel like it makes me a better trainer. Showing clients grace. My clients are all moms. They're all wives. Some of them work, and their wives and their moms, and they're so hard on themselves sometimes. And I think showing them grace goes such a long way in their fitness journey.
Because a lot of times, we're one of the only people that actually show them grace.
Oh, 100%.
And that's not to knock their husbands. It's not to knock their kids. Kids aren't even aware, right? Oh, they're not aware that they're not showing grace.
Kids can be the most humbling little a-holes on the face of the planet. No, I get what you're saying. Yeah, it's relationships are what separate good trainers from mediocre trainers. It's your ability to maintain and water those relationships with your clients. Yeah, it's not easy being a mom.
No.
You wear many hats.
Yeah.
And you will always put yourself last. And if I could be in their corner, giving them grace and celebrating the micro wins, then that's so much more sustainable for their life.
And it's what leads to like lifelong transformations. Yes. Humble brag, like if you Google my company and you look for, I don't know if it shows it like on a consumer side, but if you Google my company, or if I go look at my Google reviews of my company, like it'll, of course, like AI now, like it pulls keywords.
Right.
And like some of the most like common in keywords is like empathy, relationship, care. Like those are the things, like that's the foundation of my company. Like it's very fitting for what I ended up naming my business, because it wasn't the original name of my business. It's something that developed when I was here in Arizona. And yeah, I mean, I think it's just super important. I think one of the biggest things that I focus on, and I think to what you're getting at, is I think you actually shared something today about this, is like it is not selfish as a mom, right, to put yourself first. If anything, it's selfish to constantly put yourself last, because it doesn't allow you to show up as the best version of yourself for your husband and for your kids. And they know, like in the long run, they will feel that. They will recognize it. There will come a day. There was a recent interview that I witnessed and I absolutely love this, is there's an age where your kids think you're superhuman and you can do no wrong. But now more than ever in our society and culture, there will come a day they will know all your flaws, and you cannot hide anything. So we not only owe it to ourselves to just be our best self, like go to therapy, have faith in, for us, God, right? Some form of faith, some community, strength, all of those things, and work on our things. Like we owe it to the next generation not to continue to pass on these things to the best of our ability. So I think you're well on your way. Appreciate you coming on. Where can we find you?
I'm on Instagram, Sara Michelle with 2 L's, and that's about it. In Queen Creek. Yes.
Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. If this episode brought you value, please subscribe, share with a friend, and leave us a review. We are not normal. We are intentional.